I have a public records request to make. The Longboat Key News of September 27th, in the opening sentence, discussing the ULI program and the interview list and what have you, made reference to a special records request, which of course the town honors. It's the law, and but its objective is public. The public has a need and a right to know. On page 4 of that same, and this is where my public records request comes in. There's an article by, I assume it's Dan Dowd, although it's spelled Dan Down, and it's among other things, and I don't have to defend George Spoll. George can take care of himself. But it's got a very unhappy, unfortunate attack on George. As a former commissioner and a former mayor, I resent it. And so my public records request is, who is the gentleman who wrote, or maybe it's a woman, who wrote this column? I've asked you before, you don't want to do it. I know there's no legal obligation, but if we're trying to let the public know what's going on in this town, I think this is one of those times you ought to step up to the bat instead of hiding behind whatever you hide behind. Thank you.
One other thing that I'd like to get straight is, it just seems that while our vice mayor is mentioning that it would be helpful if we have a civility policy, the commission does, and it would be interesting to know if our people who report the news also have a civility policy. And if they do have one, could they please share it with us? So that would be very helpful.
I'm reluctant to do this, but because I hate to seem to disagree with anybody, but as one who has worked as a journalist and one who has written in papers and also one who has objected to coverage and been annoyed by coverage and raised questions, I think we all have to be very careful. We don't have to like what the newspapers say, and we can express ourselves as individuals. We can ask questions, we can try to point out what we think is right or wrong, but I think we have to be very, very careful when we speak from this position up here to make sure that our objections don't cross, and I don't think they have at this point, but have to be careful that they don't tend to cross into any kind of intimidation. The press can be irresponsible. They can be wrong. We can prefer them to act in a certain way, but we certainly can't compel it any more than any other body should be. So while we can continue to invite their fairness and their completeness and their accuracy and their context, we have to live with what they come out with.
Thank you.
Steve Reed, Longboat Key News, and thanks for giving me an opportunity to respond to some of the questions and some of the concerns or the reactions of both Commissioner Larson and the Vice Mayor over the recent article in the paper by Dan Dowd. Let me make it clear why I print that article and why I print Dan Dowd on occasion and who Dan Dowd is, and I think I'll be pretty consistent with what I've said all along. It's pretty straightforward and simple. I own a newspaper. I'm not in government. I'm not a politician. My allegiance is probably closer to what I see as the First Amendment to a right of press in this country. The right of press, if you go back in time to Benjamin Franklin, he wrote consistently under a pen name. He wrote because of a tyrannical government. He wrote because of condemnation by certain people in government that he didn't want to deal with. So when I was approached in the community by someone, can I write an article under the pen name of Dan Dowd? I thought about it, and I said, yeah, why not? Why shouldn't this person be allowed to express their opinion? It doesn't give them the right in my paper to say whatever they want. It doesn't give them the right to be insulting or to make unfounded attacks. So that's the standard I use. If I feel the attacks are unfounded, if I feel the facts are wrong, that's my error. But if someone wants to write in anonymously and they, for fear of being in the community, perhaps in a certain position, perhaps because they want to say something, I don't have a problem with that. Now, let me, oh, the clock's not ticking, how generous. Okay, let me bring up another thing. There's something else I want to talk about, which is the civility policy. I think that, and these are random notes that I jotted down in reaction to what you brought up. I do believe in a certain amount of civility. And my idea of civility is to print reactions to what I write. If you don't like something, I'm pretty generous and always will print a reaction. I'll print pretty much any letter that comes in from any community member. I'll sit out in the audience and listen to insults toward other community members. I'll listen to, I'll take it in. And at the same time, I think one person's idea of civility changes. Another person may view another opinion of civility as an insult or as indignation. And so I'm more interested in standards of journalism. So I do want to see facts. You have to separate news from opinion. When someone wants to write an opinion, whether they don't happen to disapprove of former Commissioner or Mayor Spoll's performance for various reasons, that's their opinion. I think that each of us and each of you have done tremendous work and have made, and some of it's open to debate whether they've made errors in the community. But the reality is you're public officials and are therefore on a public stage, and there is the expectation in a community that the work will be debated, criticized, analyzed. And sometimes that can get a little ugly, but I think the outcome is it's a greater good to have that debate, to have that criticism. Sometimes it goes too far. Sometimes I rein myself in. Sometimes some things can be probably just too rough. And so, and that's human nature. But the reality is it's better to have that than the alternative. I'm not a milquetoast person. I don't believe in milquetoast coverage. I like strong opinion. I like your strong debates. I think you're at your best when you incisively debate issues and when it gets to that edge. And so, I don't know whether I've answered the question. The reality is Dan Dowd is an anonymous member of our community who wants to be known as Dan Dowd. And I don't think that really, maybe it takes away from the fact that you can't personally criticize the person, but I'll run any criticism of the writing. I'll take the heat for it, and I guess that's the best answer I can give. I don't know if it satisfies what you're looking for. You can't pull any campaign signs out of the ground, but the fact is, that's the reality of Dan Dowd. So.
So, could you explain the campaign signs comment? I didn't understand that. How did that relate to what you were saying?
What I'm saying is, you can't have any reprisal on Dan Dowd as a person because he doesn't have a sign in the ground saying, I'm Dan Dowd, come over to my work, and you can't remove Dan Dowd from the paper. That's what I mean by that.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, no, look.
Kurt? Come on, Kurt.
Okay, no press. Let's adjourn.